Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Angela Singleton, and we're going to get started today. I am the Resource Assistance for Rural Environments, or RARE for short, AmeriCorps member, serving Eastern Oregonians with the Oregon Department of Energy. I will be helping to facilitate and moderate today's webinar about the Community Renewable Energy Grant Program. We will shorten the program name with the acronym CREP for the rest of the presentation. Next slide, please. The purpose of today's webinar is primarily to answer application-related questions for the current opportunity period that closes at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, February 15th. Before we jump into the presentation, I wanted to start by introducing the presenters for the day. We have Clay Deckert and Jason Knaus. We also have Patricia Phillips on the line, and she will be available to help with any technical support. Next slide, please. I'm going to cover some housekeeping items. We are recording this meeting and will post it on the CREP webpage. I will be monitoring the chat and raised hands. If you have technical issues, please send a chat to the webinar host, Patricia. Please use the chat feature to send questions to the host and presenters. We will not use the Q&A feature of WebEx. When you get to the question period, in about 20 minutes, please use the raised hand function to indicate interest in asking a question or making a comment. Next slide, please. A few words now about using WebEx for those of you who are new to the platform. You can use the raised hand function to ask a question and use the chat function to type questions. We really want this to be useful for you and encourage questions. I will be helping to moderate and find times to pause to address those questions. For those of you on the phone, you can use *3 to raise your hand, and we will unmute you and call on you to ask your questions. Does anybody have any questions about using WebEx before we begin? Just waiting for a chat or a raised hand. Now I'm going to pass the presentation over to Clay, who will provide a summary of the program and pause to address questions throughout.
Excellent. Thank you, Angela, and welcome everybody. We have a pretty simple agenda today. We've got, I'm going to talk a little bit about application guidance. I'm going to do a little summary of round 1 scoring and then pass it right over to Jason, and he'll go into a little bit more detail about the round 2 competitive review procedures. Then we've got the majority of the time set aside for questions and answers from our audience members today, from the attendees. And then we'll wrap it up right around 2 o'clock with some final reminders and let you get back to your day. Okay, what I've got up now is the web page for the Community Renewable Energy Grants Program. And, excuse me, and what we're going over on the web page are to focus on, well, today's webinar is to focus on applications that are already, applicants that are already familiar with this grant program and the 4 opportunity announcements that are currently open. The application submission deadline, as we had posted up, is February 15th at 5 p.m., which is only 2 weeks away. So if you're new to the program and you're looking for introductory information, please spend some time with the documents on our webpage to figure out if your project team has time to complete an application by the deadline, or if it may be better to wait and prepare for round 3 later this year. One of the keys to a strong application is a renewable energy project that fits the program's specific definitions and requirements. So I want to highlight our key documents and where to find them on our webpage. All right, that arrow is pointing to the link to House Bill 2021, which is where CREP was born. It's got about 8 pages of the key information that this program was built on. From House Bill 2021, came the administrative rules, the Oregon administrative rules, and this is a link to those. That's about 15 pages of information. Then out of the rules came the opportunity announcements, which are now currently open. And that took the language from the rules and turned it into specific instructions that get edited a little bit each round. And this has the specific rules and guidance for building an application. And then last, we've got our application user guides. And this will take you into our online process and procedures. And it actually has all of the application questions laid out for it in the PDF format. So it's a great place to learn about and to help you gather your information and create your responses prior to diving in to starting to fill out an online application. It's a great way to prepare things in a simpler fashion without having to be online and going through the sections of the application. All right, now just a quick word on eligibility and completeness. After you've reviewed the program documentation, please contact us if you have any questions. We recommend, again, preparing your information before starting an online application. Once you're in the online application, though, please read the instructions in each section very carefully as you go through it. There's 11 distinct sections in the online application. Now, in the next 2 slides, I'm going to show 7 mandatory documents that must be uploaded in the online application. These are also listed in the checklist in section 10 of the online application as a reminder right at the end before you get to section 11 where you have to sign and submit the application. The first 4 are consistent across all applications as required documentation, but I would just want to take some time to highlight one of these. This is the itemized list of total project costs. Whoops. Got out of order there. Sorry about that. There we go. The list of project costs must be itemized, and each line item of cost must have the distinction where you've determined it's eligible or an ineligible cost. We had a few folks missing that in round 1, and that's why I just wanted to highlight it at this time. Then the remaining 3 required documents are only if you have one of these types of partners. Then you have to supply the document that's posted here. And this is all, of course, in the opportunity announcement and in the online application as well. All right, now just a minute on round 1. In round 1, we had 58 applications in the competitive review. And the top scoring 21 applications across all opportunity announcements were offered grants. The lowest score of the grantees was 74.4. The next 14 lower scores all had more than 70 points. So it was 14 applications separated by less than 4 points. This demonstrates how close the scoring was and highlights the importance of a complete and detailed application and the benefits of having a project that satisfies as many of the program priorities as possible. Speaking of program,
question might be a good time to answer. What is considered written authority to apply?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. That can be, minutes from a city council meeting where they have the council or your board of commissioners, if you're a county, where they approve you applying for this grant. It all depends on the applicant's structure. It could also be if it's like, say, a city manager who already has that authority to apply for grants. It's just outlining for us that authority, where that authority lies, and who has that authority, documenting that. So it doesn't always have to be specifically from your overarching body, authority body. It can be just a description of how that authority is delegated and clearly showing us the rules where that comes from. Okay, now I'll just continue on with these. Oh, sorry.
Would a superintendent count?
If that superintendent has the authority from above to apply for and sign contracts, to apply for grants and sign contracts. And in particular for the application, we're only looking for the authority to apply for the grant. The authority to sign the contract or the performance agreement, as we call them here, comes with when a grantee has been selected. But yes, a superintendent would just need to outline where their authority comes from and how it streams down from whatever governing board you had down to that superintendent.
Great. Thanks, Clay.
Sure. Right. Thank you for that question. We also have in round one, I think that might have been covered in the Q&A document that's in our round one files. And soon this week, we'll be posting our updated version of frequently asked questions or question and answers that have come in over the course of both rounds. And I think that is one we've got asked quite often, and that's in there too. If the way I explained it wasn't clear to anybody, please look for it on our website. And speaking of program priorities, that's what I have up now, right? The House bill included 7 priorities for ODO to consider when selecting projects for grant awards. These 7 priorities are included in the competitive review scoring criteria. None of these priority items are required for an application to be eligible, but when a project can support priority areas, it could make a stronger application. On the other hand, if your project does not need support, or if your project does not support a priority area, you don't need to spend time on an answer that will not strengthen your application. And now Jason is going to highlight some key areas of the competitive review.
All right, thank you, Clay. Hello, my name is Jason Knaus, one of the incentive analysts, as Angela mentioned. Before I jump into my short presentation, just wanted to create this important program notice, and that's that the CREP program is relatively unique in its program that each of the applications are competitively reviewed by an external evaluation committee and selected ODO staff. And because of that, we wanted to take a segment of this presentation today to make sure that people understand that applicants need to do a very close review of the competitive review criteria that you'll find within your particular opportunity announcements. In each of those 4 announcements, you will see a table that has all of the details in the scoring, and we highly encourage, along with all of the other pieces of information and documentation Clay mentioned, we highly recommend looking at this table in your opportunity announcement closely. And we'll show you a quick example of that. Can we go to the next slide? And so, the format of PowerPoint doesn't allow me to do this as a 1-page, but in your opportunity announcement, this is what you're looking for. This is what I just brought up. Just wanted to show that to you so that as you're going through the announcement, you'll know what you're looking for to pay very close attention here. So if we could go on to the next slide, please. And what we want to quickly do is break out what that means and what that means to scoring and how that is competitively reviewed as you're going through filling your application out in tandem with your close review of the criteria. And the first and largest section is the strength of your overall project, whether this is a planning or a development construction project. And this initial section is worth 45 total combined points. And the areas that it'll cover is the strength of the project team, the operations plan, the overall description of the project, a clear and concise description of your project, renewable energy project that you're proposing, the financial plan, the project plan, the overall project plan, as well as its schedule. And can we go to the next slide? I'll just give it a quick pause in case there is a question that happens in between. All right, we'll go ahead and keep going. So the one of the next sections, we start moving into those program priority areas that Clay mentioned earlier that come out of the bill. And in this area, we are looking at the equity criteria that's built around your project. And that is going to be items that deal with the location in that community that's going to be primarily served. Those communities that are served by the project, your community project leadership team. This could be leaders from the actual project. This could be leaders within the community, within organizations, within community groups that are going to have an impact by this particular project. We're also looking for those partnerships. Have the public body and our partners reached out to various stakeholders and partners within the community about your project? Or in a planning project, what is your estimated plan for partnerships as you move that project from planning into construction? And then that would also tie into the outreach plan for your project. Are you reaching out to people? Are you getting feedback about the project? And then finally, for the equity criteria, we'd be looking at an equity framework for your project as well. And one other piece is that depending on whether this is a renewable only construction and planning project, this section would be worth 15 points. If you have a renewable energy project with a resilience factor, a component, this section would be 10 points, and that's to adjust for a couple of the other specific resilience questions about your project. And I don't see any new questions, so we'll go ahead and move on, please.
Actually, Jason, there are some quick
thanks.
questions here. One of them would be which tool or mechanism would be the preferred for demographic data, census, EPA, etc. Is there a preferred tool?
There is not a preferred tool. The program does not outline any type of specific tool. We do in the applicant help section under the resources, and I think Clay walked through that in one of the earlier slides. We do have helpful resources, and within that, I believe it's the very top section, you will see some of the various resources where you can go in and plug in that localized data or plug in your local information to start receiving some of that data. We will say it certainly doesn't hurt. The more information that you choose to gather to put into your application around these, the more beneficial for the reviewers.
Okay, great. And then one more about how do we identify an environmental justice community?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, how do we identify an environmental justice community, and where could they get more resources about that?
Clay, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Basically, the CREP rules do not have specific definitions for the types of environmental justice communities that are listed in the House Bill 2021 definition, including rural communities, communities experiencing low income, coastal communities, etc. We have those specific communities by definition. And so because ODO understands that the definitions vary across government entities, so applicants may decide what definitions to use, but must detail and demonstrate how their projects are in environmental justice communities, and separately how and to what extent their projects serve the members of those environmental justice communities.
All right, thank you. And Angela, was there any others?
Not for now. We'll move on. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So now as we're moving forward, now we're getting into those exact project and program priorities outlined in the bill in the project benefits section. And this is another area where applicants can find those additional scoring criteria if this is available and is a part of the project or part of your policies and current and current business operations. And in this area, we would be looking for prior investments in energy efficiency measures within that area. Also looking at priority and inclusive hiring practices. And for the energy or the renewable energy projects with resilience, we would be looking at the overall energy resilience aspects of that project. An additional one is the natural hazard mitigation planning that's FEMA approved. This is another area you can pick up additional scoring if you have that plan approved and in place. And then we're also looking for either estimates or actuals, depending if it's a planning or a construction project, of the anticipated energy cost savings to families and businesses in that community, as well as the potential for economic development around this particular project, whether going into construction development or the anticipated development of a project might lend in a planning project scenario. And then as well, the anticipated or forecasted local jobs that will be created from this project. And this is not just simply the construction or installation of it. This is, we're looking for that life cycle impact, not just for the planning or the construction on-site tangibles, but what is going to be that operations positions, the maintenance, the ongoing for that 5-year life cycle post-commissioning. And that would include even planning projects. We are looking for that information estimated out. And I'll go ahead and give it just a moment in case there's a question that comes in. Angela, do you have one?
Yeah. Can you remind people when the round 3 opportunity will be released?
I think we'll have a quick section on that when we jump into the Q&As. As of just the short version right now is we don't have a specified date for round 3. We are anticipating and looking at round 3 being in potentially late summer, maybe early fall. But we will definitely have that information posted out shortly after, or within a decent time frame after we wrap up round 2.
Okay, great. And then another question just popped in is how do we estimate at the planning phase?
Well, it would be an estimate. What we're looking for is you're looking at putting together your planning for this particular project and then envisioning what that's going to be at construction installation. And what would those impacts be based on that project, whether we're talking about jobs, whether we're talking about some of the other factors on that that we were talking about in the last slide.
Okay, great. That's it for now, Jason.
Okay. In that last section on the competitive scoring criteria, this is where we get into the project diversity. This section really is going to be the evaluator's overall assessment of things like the geographic diversity of your particular project, where it is in the state. Part of CREP's priorities are to make sure that there is ample distribution of projects across the state, both in total and between rounds. We're also going to be, our evaluators will also be looking at the diversity of the technology, the resource types, and even the project sizing, or that impact, energy impact of the project in size and scale. And I think we may have had another question come in, Angela.
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Thank you. One of the other things, as we move away from that criteria, one of the other things that we wanted to make sure that people understand, and this really applies whether if you've even gone in to do an application already, or you're in draft mode, or you're just getting ready to begin, or carrying over information from round 1 into a round 2 app, is please pay particular attention that we have updated some of the requirements for the application on the application in this second round. And that is that applicants need to enter all responses in the provided fields on the application and in that question's requested format. Please read those directions carefully. In addition, file uploads to support that should only be supporting documentation and materials to responses or as required for application eligibility. So those uploaded documentation is not answers to those questions. It is supporting documentation to the answer that you've already placed in on the application. And lastly, we do ask that you do your best to name your files, your uploaded files clearly, and ideally to have a match in some way back to the question that you are uploading that supporting documentation for. Again, as we said at the beginning, this is competitively reviewed by evaluators, and this is one of those areas that just really helps the evaluation of that project, as well as making it an efficient process. So we appreciate that. And if we could go to the next slide, please. And in addition, we wanted to do a couple short announcements here real quick before we move into the full Q&A. And one of those is we have produced 2 separate series of recorded videos that are application guidance. We go into much more detail than we're going into here. And those are around both the planning and the construction applications. And what we cover is we don't go through every single question, but we do a much more in-depth version of what we're covering here, where we're going through key application sections and questions and relating them back to that competitive review scoring criteria in your opportunity announcements. So on the CREP webpage, under applicant help in the sidebar, you'll see those video tabs. Go ahead and click on that, and that'll take you to the playlist on Department of Energy's YouTube channel. And if we could go to the next slide. And then one additional is that oftentimes you may have a question that comes up after this, or a follow-up question after this, or you'll think of one after this particular presentation. We have also launched recently our Q&A form portal. That also is on the website where you see that questions and submit through the portal. This is a form-based, so you're able to actually drill down a little closer to the type of project that you're asking the question about. And then we even have some core topics that seem to be consistent areas where people have questions. So the more information you provide us on the form, the faster that we can research that and get that information back to you. And with that, if there are no questions prior to, I'm going to turn it back over to Angela. And thank you very much for attending today.
Thanks, Jason and Clay, for that presentation. We'll now start collecting questions in the chat. And I started and went to the beginning of the chat just to make sure that I didn't miss any. So I'm going to go through those first and then get through the rest of the chat log there. And then I will look for raised hands as well. And remember, phone users, it's *3 to raise your hand. The first question that I will bring back up is about the thoughts for how many applications you will expect to receive in round 2.
Angela, can you, I had my microphone was beeping a little bit. Could you repeat that question for me, please?
Yeah, of course. There was a question about how many applications that you expect to receive in round 2.
In round 2, we don't have a solid expectation of applications. We currently have in draft or submitted, we're approximately in about 35 to 40 applications at this time. We anticipate many of those will move to submitted by the 15th. And we also do anticipate many more coming in those last few days before the 15th, which is why we wanted to do this presentation and get the videos out there.
Okay, great. And then a follow-up question about round 1, if there were any canceled projects and funding rolling over into round 2.
As of right now, no. The round 1 awardees are still in process, and all of those projects are still on the slate to move forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see here. Looks like there is a hand up as well. Patricia, do you want to unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Jen Patterson with Deschutes County. Thank you so much for putting this together. I really appreciate you guys providing this information. I have 2 separate questions. My first question is, at what stage does a project qualify as having started? And does executing a contract with a design team qualify? And this is specifically for a construction project.
Okay. The the construction start on the start date of the for a construction project is that is going to be when it has to occur within 12 months of the execution date of a performance agreement. And the second part is that construction that does not include fencing or grading or site prepping. It is the day that you begin the installation of the renewable energy product or project or with that resilience. And then can you give me the second question once again?
I think that answers the question. So we were going to incorporate some of our design planning into our construction project and have it be one project. And so we're wondering if that would qualify within that first 12 months, but it sounds like it specifically needs to be the energy resource.
Actually, Jen, if I'm understanding the second part as it relates to the first part, I want to make sure you go back in and look at the rules for the eligible costs for a construction grant. There are eligible costs in the construction grant that can be applied to some of the design and planning and whatnot. And as part of the CREP program, if awarded, you can under some certain circumstances and requirements, you can be eligible for a 30% advance on the grant upon signing of the performance agreement. So those preliminary funds could be used potentially. It would depend on those exact costs that you're talking about,
Right.
but could be available to pay for those even prior to the actual physical construction starting. And I'm going to.
So what starts that 12-month timeline?
The 12-month timeline is the signature date of execution of your performance agreement.
Okay, but that potential 30% upfront eligible cost wouldn't come until the execution of the performance agreement.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
that would
okay.
come. You would essentially be eligible for that at the signing of the performance agreement. There would be some timetable before that 30%, actually arrived, but that would be immediately would be eligible based on a couple of requirements to be able to qualify and to get that 30% advance.
Right. And then just to recap, again, that 12-month period begins at the signing of the performance agreement, and the construction startup includes or must include actual renewable energy being installed to some extent.
Yeah, the installation of the proposed system, not the setup, not the preparation work, but the actual beginning, and that would need, yeah.
Okay, and then, sorry, not to take up too much time, but one more totally separate question regarding under the competitive review project benefits portion, the priority hiring and inclusive hiring. So we're looking at a project that is owned and would be operated by Deschutes County. So I'm not sure if we would be hiring specifically for this, but can we incorporate our current priority and inclusive hiring practices for the county, as in county employees will be working on this project?
I'm gonna send that one to Clay if he feels like he's got some information on that one, because he went through a lot of the program priorities before.
Sure, thanks, Jason. Well, so the scoring criteria is geared toward policies that will be applied to the project, right? So mentioning the policies that are involved is great, but it's better if it's ties into the hiring and promotion aspects that will be applied to the procurement functions of the project.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
You bet.
Jen.
And Jen, I would also say take a couple of minutes and look at the video where we cover that section, where we cover the section 8 in one of the videos that we were just talking about that are posted up. I think you'll get a lot more information and clarity through those videos as well.
Great, will do. Thank you.
And Clay or Jason, can you remind folks where they can find this webinar again and when?
This particular webinar, we should have I'm going to ask some of our background people to see if they can text me the exact date because I'm not sure. But this webinar and even the slides will be available on the website. I believe we are able to do that in just within a couple of days.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And then we have a couple more hands raised. So I'm going to ask Lori to unmute and introduce herself or themselves and ask their question. We heard you a little bit. You want to try again?
Okay, I think I'm back now. My question is, I'm looking for grants to help pay for an HVAC system for a school district that has a 49-year-old system. So replacing the system with a new efficiency, an efficient system would save between 20 and 40% of energy costs. I know that the grant said it needs to be renewable energy. Would this be applicable to this grant? Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yes.
we did have that. Clay, do you want to jump on that one as well?
The short answer is no. This is not we don't have efficiency criteria that are eligible costs for this grant. And that's where we would try and point you toward Energy Trust of Oregon, and the local, whatever utility is your provider for their efficiency programs that are available. And then there's information about those and coming federal stuff all on the bigger Oregon Department of Energy website. We've got a lot of links on chasing down different programs that address efficiency, but that's not included in this grant.
Okay, thank you.
And Lori, we appreciate you joining us. Clay and I had planned on returning your email this afternoon after this webinar. So thank you for joining, and we did see your email that came in about
I
this.
appreciate that. And I think it's nice that you're putting the links to the side so it's easy for people to get to.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lori. Okay, we have one more hand up from Scott. If you could do the same, unmute and introduce yourself and ask your question.
I'm sorry, you cut out. Was that me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hi, this is Scott Lindberg from Road Community College in Grants Pass. First of all, thank you for taking the time to set up this webinar. It's very informative. And I have a question about a planning project for a district that has more than one location. We proposed a construction project in the last round that was rejected for being incomplete, and were suggested that we pursue a planning application. So we are doing so for community energy resilience at our main Redwood campus. But we are also interested in potentially doing a planning study for renewable energy at our Table Rock campus in Jackson County. Are we able to either submit two separate applications or one application with components of both energy resilience and renewable energy?
The answer is yes, and that yes applies to both. That really becomes your decision on how you would want to proceed with that application process. If you feel it's more advantageous to create two applications, or if you feel financially and competitively that merging both projects into one application.
Okay, and because I don't see the ability in the application to have more than one project location,
If you look at the question where it's talking about the siting, you'll see that it has the form for address of the location, address, city, even coordinates, right?
right.
If look at the question above a little, look at the how the question is worded as it moves through, and you can use the text field box to essentially create a second site, or just list it as site 1, put that information in, site 2, put that information in. It was just going to be difficult for us to estimate how many sites a particular project would have, so we essentially put the form in for one core address, and then you can enter additional site details up in the text box. But then I would also say further down the line, as you're moving through the application, you would want to separate your information out between a site one and a site two. So, in the budgeting details or the finance details, you'd be entering in kind of a total of all, right? But in some of the breakout areas, you would be listing specific information about the details that you're looking for the system or the project in the site one or the site two, if that helps.
It does immensely. Thank you. You can't see me giving you a thumbs up, but I'm giving you a thumbs up. Thank you.
I'll give you one there. Thank you.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna hop back into the chat. There's some great questions here. The first one is, it seems like applicants ask for the grant amount, but is there a benefit to noting lower amounts, say 50% of the goal request? Something about better than none concept.
I think I'm going to let Clay come on and give his impression. My take is that the first slide that I touched on, this is a competitively reviewed application. That project could be $2,000, and it's going to be reviewed competitively against the projects in its opportunity, all of those projects in its opportunity announcement. So 100,000 or 2,000 in planning, or 5,000 or $1 million in construction. We look at every project competitively because the size and scale of a particular project for a location may not also be the same. So I guess my answer would be no. Bring your projects. We want to see your projects. And Clay, do you have anything to add there as well?
Very short. I don't think that there is anything in the scoring criteria that would give more points to somebody that comes in with a more economical project in that sense, that not asking for as much as they could doesn't fit well into the scoring criteria. So I don't see the benefit either.
Yeah, and I'll double back on that. In one of my slides on the project diversity, we talked about the project size as being one of those evaluator assessments. And I think maybe a better way of looking at that is that project size to its impact in that locality. So I probably should have made that statement a little bit clearer.
Great. Okay. And the next question asks, can you please clarify the cost match requirements for renewable versus resilient construction grants?
Can we repeat that one?
I got that one.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. Thanks, Clay.
So sure. We just have one opportunity announcement that has a match or only up to 50%, and that is the construction renewable without a resilience component. And that opportunity announcement, will describe that. And so it's construction grants with the renewable only are only eligible up to 50% of the total project cost, whereas the other three opportunity announcements offer up to 100% of the total project costs.
Okay. And then next we have, what date has Odo committed to get PAs and advance funds for round one awarded applicants?
As we are still working through getting the performance agreements finalized for round one and getting those out to the awardees to begin moving those projects forward. And so I think Clay or I have taken some time to update when those questions have come in, and definitely do appreciate the question. We do want to keep this webinar and the Q&A towards the round two applications for this for right now, but thank you.
Okay, great. Also, is there a contractor list that can do renewable energy analysis?
For our program, no, it's not necessarily like the solar plus storage. There are no specific contractor requirements. They would be, if you do have one selected going into your project, you would want to include that information. It can help with the strength of your project team.
And if the question was asked looking for a list of things, Energy Trust of Oregon is a great source of their affiliated contractors and things like that for some of their programs. That's a good resource to ask for help. Because Odo, especially in the competitive area, we won't advocate for or provide any lists of recommended contractors to stay neutral.
Okay. And then we have another clarifying question about timeline. The renewable energy and storage, does it have to be installed within 12 months of the award of the grant?
Say that one. Say that one more time.
Well, I heard that one too, Jason. Sorry.
Go ahead,
So
Clay. I've got a little
the,
scratchiness. I have a little scratchiness on my playback.
It's construction must begin within 12 months of signing the contractor performance agreement, and construction of the renewable energy system and its components is what must start. And then on construction applications, from the time of the contract, you've got 3 years, 36 months to complete that construction.
Okay, great. Next we have, how soon after the application deadline would a performance agreement be sent if granted the award?
After the application deadline, we move into what's the next round process for us internally. So on the website, you'll see that we have the award notification is approximately dated. We're looking at approximately around the 1st to middle of May, around May 8th or in that time frame. We would still, from that point after selection, our ideal time frame from selection to performance agreement in hand would be ideally, hopefully, would be in the ballpark of about 4 months, and hopefully that would be a maximum timeline.
Okay, great. And then I'm going to hop over to, I see a raised hand. Heather, are you still there? And would you like to ask your question?
I'm here. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I think maybe a similar question to what was asked before related to if you have a campus that you're exploring renewables and resiliency for, maybe with multiple civic buildings, is there going to be any, I don't know, competitiveness or strength issues if you are wanting to engage your community in a planning process about where you want to prioritize that? Because that we wouldn't want to be dinged if we weren't coming in with just one specific project on a particular building. We'd like to really make this a meaningful engagement with our community about where their priorities are. Is that going to hurt us if we're not focusing just on a particular building?
No, I think that if I'm understanding your question correctly, I think that engagement has the ability to strengthen the project, could have some opportunities for those added scoring, program benefits and priorities that we spoke about earlier. Clay, do you have anything you want to add there?
I think you nailed it. We had several applications in round one that were similar to that, campus or compound situations, and they were looking at multiple buildings. And for planning, they wanted that engagement to talk about that with their students or with their residents in the community. And so that's a great aspect of the community involvement and community engagement, and not required in a planning grant to have that specific, rooftop already identified.
That's so great to hear. Thank you. And I was just curious about if that also applies to the consulting fees in terms of eligible costs to have consultant support for small jurisdictions that may not have a lot of staff, to be able to have the consultants support that stakeholder engagement as an eligible cost, not just for consultants to do a solar analysis or something like that.
In that one, it would be, we'd probably want to get a little bit more specific detail from you, just to make sure that we're completely understanding what you mean by consultants and the work that they're doing. There are going to be, in that type of work, there's going to be some costs that could wind up having some eligibility. There are some costs that might not. So I think this might be one of those great opportunities to go into the form and ask Clay and I maybe a little bit more specific of what the consultants would be doing as a part of the project. We might be able to help answer that one a little bit better. And in addition, you can also go back into the administrative rules and just look at those for that particular type of project. Look at the eligibility or the eligible versus the non-eligible costs.
Okay, that's helpful. I see other people are asking about that too for small organizations that don't have a lot of support. And I will definitely follow up with you. I guess I just have one last question in terms of defining what is your threshold for considered a small scale application or small scale renewable?
It's similar to the question that was asked earlier about the dollar figure of a particular project. The program outlines a project size at a maximum. There is no outline of a project size down at a minimum. And Clay, do you have any more you want to add there?
No minimums. We had one application that had some parking lot solar for 9 spots. They wanted to do net metered solar above 9 parking spots, and that's a great use, and the net metering would reduce the costs of that city, so there was benefit to the city and the community just simply through savings and pollution reduction through net metered solar.
Perfect. Those are great examples. I appreciate it.
Great. Okay, so the next question is about eligibility. Would an Oregon Housing Authority agency be considered a special government body?
To the best of my knowledge, yes, they would. And excuse me, the Housing Authority would be a special body. You can confirm that. I don't have the specific statute up in front of me, but within our program documentation, you'll find a link that goes back to all of the specifically listed special bodies. So not just Housing Authority, but if you're not quite sure if you qualify, you can go in to that statute and pretty much find the specificity you need to determine if you are. And if you're still not sure, use that form and send a question in for us, and we'll get that information back to you.
Great. Okay. Next question here is similar to what we previously heard about small organizations not having staff and funding resources needed to develop a competitive application for the planning grant. Without funding to contract planning, design assistance, renewable energy projects will never happen in our community. This seems completely misaligned with your stated equity goals. Will future rounds of funding address this major problem?
The program came through HB 2021. We always appreciate concerns and feedback, from applicants that are moving through that project. But as the program team, we at this time, we run the program as the legislature put it into play. I don't know how I'd be able to answer it any different than that, but I definitely do appreciate it.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add to that is I give it a shot on the application, because the planning applications, even though it's asking for a lot of detail, there's a lot of room to put in estimated or desired your vision around what your project is without having to have all of the details included. And although the application might make it seem like that. And so again, if that's some details that you want to go over with us individually, shoot us that question, shoot us an email, and we can get in those details. But we think that the program does allow small organizations to give it that best shot to put forward a competitive application so that they can get money to hire those consultants to do the planning for their project.
Thank you, Clint.
Great. And the next question is about Section 6 of the planning grant application, which is please describe the market for the energy produced by the system. And the question is, can you elaborate on that?
And Clay, do you want to jump on that one?
Yeah, that's pretty basic. For solar PV, that would be net metered. So the market is that you're net metered with your utility, and it's going back. That's the market that you have available as a small business or a small public body or even residential. That's what's available to us. Larger projects might have more details in selling, having power purchase agreements and things like that would be the market. A hydro project would be either it's supplying energy directly locally back to, let's say, a water treatment plant. They're using it internally. That's their market. Or a hydro that is producing electricity that then gets net metered back to their utility. The market is selling it back to the utility under whatever rules we have under the Public Utility Commission.
Okay, we got a couple more questions here. If someone's already started planning, would they still be eligible for the planning grant?
The answer is that, and this does come from the rules, that all reasonable planning costs that are incurred after the application deadline, all the way through from that moment, would be eligible, or those eligible costs would be eligible for the grant.
Okay. That's all I'm seeing for written questions. Is there anyone that wants to raise their hand in these last couple minutes?
And I know that we'll give it just a couple, we'll just give it another few bits for those questions, but I did want to just remind everybody that's still on, there's been fantastic questions. There's a lot of information in those videos that we just produced and put online, and they're broken out by section, so you don't have to watch a 2-hour long thing. And then the other is with that Q&A form on the website to make sure if something comes up after this or there's a follow-up on a question here, that's a great place.
Well, it looks like we're about ready to wrap up here. If there are any questions, please make sure to use the Q&A form on the website. There's also the email community.grants@energy.oregon.gov. Those go directly to Clay and Jason. So if you have any questions, please let them know. And thank you for, oh, there is one last hand.
Perfect.
Anyone
Awesome.
unmute?
Okay. What was the timeline? Did I miss that for the next round?
The timeline for the third round, not this one that's coming. That's
Correct.
coming to deadline. We do not have that definitively scheduled at this time, and we are looking ideally for round 3 applications to open up somewhere in late summer, maybe early fall.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, there is the email and reminder about the Q&A form on the website. Thank you all for your time and awesome questions today.
Yeah, thank you.